Hey guys, Rob here with McDojoLife. In today's McDojo news, we're going to talk about a man who sexually assaulted an 11-year-old girl and somehow was able to get a plea deal for the lightest sentence possible. The mother, furious. Let's check out the story. A Greenfield man who was accused of sexually assaulting an 11-year-old got the lowest sentence possible, 3.5 years, in a plea deal with the Saratoga County District Attorney's Office. And while the mother of the victim, who wants to remain anonymous to protect her child's identity, said she consented to the deal, she now wishes the case of 51-year-old Jonathan M. Aronson had been handled differently. In particular, she says she was unaware that District Attorney Karen Hagan had agreed to reduce the charges against Aronson from sexual assault against a child, first-degree rape, and endangering the welfare of a child to a single charge of attempted rape. We didn't know the charge would be attempted rape until it was already done, she said. The plea deal was formalized in a court proceeding on December 23rd. Aronson's sentencing was earlier this month. 3.5 years is the lowest sentence available to someone convicted of attempted rape, a C-class felony. New York penal law sets a maximum sentence of 15 years for the offense. In response to questions, Hagan said in an email last week that, quote, the victim and victim's mother were advised beforehand that the plea deal would be to an attempted rape charge, and that the sentence would be 3.5 years. However, Hagan would not answer questions about why the minimum sentence was appropriate in this case. And she would not respond when asked why Aronson's sentencing did not appear on the court calendar for the day it occurred. Earlier that day, a news source had emailed and called Hagan's office to determine when Aronson was due in court, but did not receive a call back. At the time the abuse occurred, the mother was in a relationship with Aronson, who was a martial arts instructor in Greenfield. She was sleeping on New Year's Day 2021 when Aronson served alcohol and marijuana to her child, and she said then sexually penetrated the 11-year-old in the child's bedroom. The child never said a word to the mother. The increasingly troubled child eventually revealed the incident to a therapist. The therapist immediately told the mother, who called the county's Child Protective Services office and law enforcement. Saratoga County Sheriff's deputies arrested him the same evening, January 5th of 2022, just over a year after the abuse occurred. I can't say his name, the mother said through tears. He's a monster. He's literally the devil, a complete predator. Hagan, the mother said, encouraged her and her child to accept the 3.5-year sentence, making the case that Aronson could be acquitted and escape punishment entirely if the case went to trial. Faced with that prospect, as well as the likelihood the child would be asked to provide potentially traumatic testimony on the stand, they agreed. The child, however, wrote a victim impact statement that the mother read in court at Aronson's sentencing. Aronson had previously been arrested in August of 2012 on charges of endangering the welfare of a child and unlawfully dealing with a child by providing alcohol, both misdemeanors. In that case, Saratoga Springs City court papers show he was given a 1-year conditional discharge and was not required to register as a sex offender. At the time, the mother had just met Aronson. He had attempted to explain the 2012 case to her by saying his former partner was, quote, a horrible woman, and that the young victim in that case was both troubled and, quote, hypersexual. I totally believed it, she said. It was a complete, horrid lie. She said Aronson made similar statements to the police when he was arrested a decade later in the case involving her child. It's just very sickening, she said. The actualization of what happened is like a train hitting me every day. Aronson's lawyer, George Lamarck, did not return a call seeking comment. Hagan did confirm that Saratoga County Judge James A. Murphy III recused himself from hearing the case, but did not say why. That recusal came after Murphy, who was serving as Saratoga County District Attorney when Aronson faced the misdemeanor charges in 2012, had arraigned and released Aronson on a $50,000 bail. Warren County Judge Robert Smith presided over Aronson's sentencing, which in addition to the prison time will include 15 years of post-release supervision, the maximum available for that sanction, and a stay-away order that will be in place for more than 11 years. This time, Aronson will be required to register as a sex offender. Let's unpack it. So this woman, who was unnamed for the safety of her child, met this martial arts instructor, Aronson, who had this shady past. That shady past included 2 misdemeanors that involved a young child. She must have been love-struck because she decided to ignore the red flags about that and put her own child's safety at risk by dating this man. Now, to add to that, he might be very good at manipulating people, and at the end of the day, the real victim here is that child. The child starts acting up because of what happened, it seems, and then goes to therapy, and during therapy tells the therapist about what had happened. That therapist does a good job making sure that the mom was made aware of what had happened, and then they immediately go to the police about this. Around that time is when the district attorney suggests that they should take the plea deal because there's a potential that he could get completely off the hook. She agrees to this plea deal. The plea deal happens, but then after that, it seems she gets upset because it's still the minimum sentence. It seems like she was made aware, but then when it happened, she got upset after she agreed to the plea deal. This piece of human crap who just molested a child is only going to get 3 years because of this. That means in 3 years' time, there's a chance that he's going to get out. And yes, just because you're put on a sex offender registry does not mean you cannot work around children. So that means people are going to have to keep their head on a swivel. Those particular laws are usually state to state as to what is and what is not required for a sex offender to do. But let's say hypothetically he's in California, he definitely can work around kids. How do I know? Because I've had to interact with the police over in California several times doing stories just like this, trying to report people who are still teaching at martial arts schools today, even though they're sex offenders. To me personally, the laws against sex offenders are so lax, it is ridiculous. Allowing a man like this, who has a track record of molesting children, to only get 3 years is a slap in the face to the victims, who have to live with that act the rest of their life. They have a life sentence that they have to go through because they have to carry this crap with them forever. Meanwhile, this dude's gonna get a slap on the wrist and get right out. This case is so sad on so many levels. The mom dated this guy knowing his past, trusted him. He turns around and does the exact same thing, even worse to her child. Child starts having major issues immediately, go figure, because of this, and has to confide in a therapist, a stranger, to be able to tell this to, and then turns around and he only gets 3 years. That's not justice. This brings us to the question of the day. The question of the day directly relates to a story I did not that long ago involving a sex offender who's still teaching martial arts. The story is called Offender and Enabler. For that story, there was a guy by the name of Gary Snap Ferguson who is a registered sex offender who, after serving time for his offenses, turned right back around and started being around and working around children again at a place called Brian Antak's Kempo Karate. I'll be doing a second story about Brian himself soon. Brian claims he didn't know that Gary was a registered sex offender. Okay, well, if he claimed that, that means he didn't do a background check. So here's where the question of the day comes in. Would you allow your child to attend martial arts classes at a studio that previously had a sex offender working around children there? Be sure to answer that question in the comment sections below before you say anything else, so that way I know that you watched the entire video. As always, I'm looking forward to reading those comments in the comment sections. Thank you all for the likes, comments, shares, subscriptions, and obviously memberships. Keep the martial arts legit.
Sure, the boy is a sex offender. I got them kick him out the Boy Scouts of America. But my baby now go rap with Fox and I go in the truth. She said me love Paul and I'm leaving you. And I'm the one for keep Paul and get me down, baby. Back some stars, study with the sensei. Them call Jack and I call himself Sensei Jack Darby. He's got a dojo back at town next to Arby's. And I'm gonna teach me how to